time to not only apply, but meet for us this evening for the interview. We have about 30 minutes, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time dilly-dallying and get right to it. I'm going to
Let's
begin
get to the
quickly.
point.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to have each of the board members introduce themselves, and then we will begin with questions. My name is Todd Sanders. I am currently the board chair, which is a revolving position, so I am serving right now as the board chair. Commissioner Doan?
Yes, I'm Jim Doan, and I've been on the board for slightly over 20 years. I'm hard of hearing, so I have to wait for the captioning to catch up. It's not that I'm not paying attention, it's that there's a slight delay for the words to show up for me. Anyway, I'm Jim.
Nice meeting you, Jim.
Commissioner Fisher?
Oh, is it? Oh, it's me. I thought it was D.
I can't even spell. I just went around on I went around on the square on the screen.
Hi, I'm Jim Duggan, the other Jim D on the board, and I've served the water district in this capacity for 29 years. It's been an excellent hobby. I love it. I love serving my community, and that's why I'm a poster child for term limits.
Boy, no pressure. It's almost as long as my own career. It's about yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. Carl.
No worries. I was a very young man when I became a board member.
Commissioner Fisher.
I'm Carl Fisher. I served 2 terms on the budget committee here in the district, and then I was appointed to the board in July.
Nice meeting you, Carl.
And would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm MD Asif Rahman. It's a pretty confusing situation. MD actually stands for Muhammad, but it's my legal first name. I also did medical doctor before I became an engineer. So and I have a PhD. So I get a lot of like doctorate versus MD versus this versus that. Anyway, so but I don't go by that. I go by Asif, ASIF, and professionally, I'm working at Siemens as a nanostructure modeling scientist. I used to work at Intel for about 23 years as a senior principal engineer there. And yeah, that's kind of my short bio. And professionally, other than professional, I enjoy gardening and hiking and building stuff. I like to build stuff. Yeah, and yeah, I pretty much made my home bio-neutral, completely bio-neutral. In fact, bio-positive. I give back to the community. I don't take electricity. I give back. I have my water well and all sorts of things. So yeah, that's just me.
Very interesting. Well, for the sake of time, again, we have about 30 minutes, which will bring us to 6:30. We're going to begin the questioning, and we're going to begin alphabetically with Commissioner Doan. And Commissioner Doan, you're probably going to have to unmute yourself.
Yell at me if I forget to turn it back on. Okay. How comfortable are you with technical stuff? Like we've been meeting not in person for the past 2.5 years, and we've all evolved to
Teams and all that.
To the point that these virtual meetings work just fine for us. And
Sure.
how do you feel about that? Are you okay with that?
I do about 11 Teams meeting a day, many from Asia to Europe to even South Africa. Yeah, on a daily basis for the last 3 years. It's yeah, not an issue.
Great.
If you want to go more technical, I guess I can go there more deeply. For example, if you wanted to make a custom configuration of a meeting for audience control or basically content control, I could actually program that meeting for you.
Well, fortunately, we have an IT department for that, and they support the board as well as the district. Commissioner Doan, did you want to ask anything else about the rest of that? Was your question number one?
If you're appointed to the board, what expertise do you bring that we could use? Each board member has a particular role that they generally follow. So where would you see in the vast universe of skills that we could use you most effectively?
This is going to be a learning experience for me, playing as a commissioner. I personally, in my office job, I'm a senior scientist whose job is to do root cause analysis. So not the apparent problem, but main problem, but the core problem, right? So root cause analysis requires be a bit of um, agnostic to current situation and go deeper, right? And look at really impartial data or trying to get data, okay? And strive for that and delay a decision without before looking into everything or at least a reasonable data set. So I guess that quality may be useful, okay? And then I, personally speaking, from a life stage standpoint, my son is just about to start his PhD in Stanford after graduating from MIT. So I'm a empty nester, so to speak. I'm sure you guys have have gone through this stage of life a lot longer before, but um, it's um, it's a void that I want to fill in my own heart. Okay, so I will try to bring, but at the same time, volunteering too much or trying to do too much can actually create confusion. So I would rather be available and ask or be told at the beginning before I start saying I can do this, I can do that, I can also do that. That does not lead to good cohesion, if that makes any sense.
Anything else, Commissioner Doan?
No.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, I believe I have the next question. The board desires that the person selected to become the new member of the board run in the upcoming May 2023 special election for a 2-year term, and then they'll have to run again in 2024. Do you intend to run for a 2-year term on the board next spring?
Yes, that would be a reasonable assumption, provided I can actually add value and I feel needed and I can contribute, right? If I'm not contributing, then just forcing myself into the board is pointless, right? I think the remaining few months of this year, if I'm selected, will give me enough indication that am I a valuable asset? Or am I a contributing asset at a minimal, right? That would be there. And if that continues in a good standing, sure enough, I do want to sign up for long term because, yeah, just a few months is nothing for a role like this. I intend to carry on.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I think I have the third question. As a board member, what would you do if you directly observed or learned of district employees appearing unprofessional or representing the district poorly, for example, through misconduct or tending to personal errands while on the job, stuff like that?
Couple of things. I will handle the same way what I do in my professional life. Um, if the person is really known to me and I've got a reasonable relationship that could be non threatening, I would give a gentle notion that, are you sure this is the right thing to do? But if the person is not known and I don't have enough what I call credible bank accountability with that person, or prior acknowledgement, then I will bring attention to the board instead of me volunteering to judge or even comment, because that could backfire. Okay, I'm not familiar with the team. I don't have enough credibility established with that. And speaking unwarranted becomes difficult, becomes non-constructive. However, it is on my duty to bring it up to the board. Okay, that if I don't, that would fail me. Does that make any sense? And as you get familiar with the system and what is expected, what's customary, what's not customary, um, things I will start to learn, and then gradually grow and increase my role. Not at the immediate vicinity. It's not my place to judge at the beginning. That's not me being afraid, just trying to learn more of the system and status quo, because every organization works slightly ever differently and it's an organic system. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yes, yeah, absolutely it does. Thank you. All right. I have question number 4 for you, Asif. Please describe your experience in meeting the needs of people with low incomes. How would your experience impact your votes in setting policy for the district, specific to increasing water rates to preserve the district's infrastructure and to prepare for future water needs?
this is actually a loaded subject, and it kind of main point why am I trying to be here in this role. Um, I came to United States with $1.79 in my pocket and built up to this point. So I truly understand the low income part of it. I'm a first generation immigrant, so you can tell how hard it is to survive with that amount of money in your pocket. But I rose quickly. But I also never forgot my origin or that part of the dire need, right? So a there is a part of me always wants to uphold the needy or uphold the neglected, so to speak. But at the same time, um, as I have grown up in my personal life, I also understand the need of infrastructure and future planning and technology and availability and service. If we don't do these things, then actually everybody suffer, not just the needy. Okay, they will complain more, but everybody will suffer. Okay, so there is a balance of what you call going all out for the needy versus building up so that a larger interest, a larger common people's interest can be served, right? So I have a plurality in mind that the interest of many will always outlast one, right? Given that dogma, I also want to always, whenever possible, look for the needies to be represented, right? So if it is technology, then I'll go for everyone. If it is rate reduction, I will definitely look for at least a way to help them out so that they can survive within their limited capacity. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes. Thank you. All right. Commissioner Doan, you have the next question. And you are muted right now, Commissioner Doan.
Muted. Now I'm unmuted. Here we go. I'll get this. Okay. Individual commissioners do not represent the district's position on issues publicly, i.e. with the customers, public entities, businesses, the media. How do you avoid misrepresenting the district's position by distinguishing your views from the district's?
This can be tricky. There is an impulse that you want to say your voice and you want to differentiate, people want to differentiate their positions. But at the same time, being a corporate animal myself, I understand that my voice is not the only voice. The bigger corporate voice is more powerful. To so instead of following the impetus of instantly responding, I tend to take question, and like I said, I do root cause debug. I tend to take a little bit of time to to respond, and that's my strategy, and it has served me well. To be honest with you, I acknowledge their question, I acknowledge their issues, never dismiss that publicly, but actually respond. Um, I should always take the time to discuss before I make an opinion, because when you go alone, you actually fall quicker than you might think. So getting a consensus gives me the power to actually follow through my commitment, even if I want to make a commitment. So essentially, listen, validate, acknowledge, but don't pass any judgment or a comment which is thought to be taking a position or a commitment without the discussion of the board.
All right, thank you. I have the next question. The board of directors is a governing body responsible for setting policy for the district, and the chief executive officer leads operations and manages the district's employees on a day-to-day basis. The chief executive officer or CEO reports to the board, and district employees report to the CEO. How do you plan to work effectively in this environment?
This is a matrix operation scheme, which is not too uncommon even in a corporate, technical industry where I live and operate. So these boundaries are somewhat well exercised in my daily life. Okay, so every roles that you explained have a boundary. So the first thing is to understand those boundaries, what one should do, what should not do, and then operate within that context. Of course, never venture to at least innovate or bring it as an option or a possibility. Okay, if he sees that, then there is no progress. If you keep on doing just status quo, then you're just another nodding head, one way or another. You don't bring any value to the table, right? So my position is to try to propose something, but then again, follow the boundaries, as you mentioned that different roles and different set of people works in a certain capacity, right? Obviously, I, I'm in a nanoscience organization, which is very different from a human-centric organization as you are, right? So, so I have to learn the ways a little bit before I can adequately, truthfully answer. I'm kind of skidding over the surface at this point because I simply don't know enough. Um, but I can learn quickly.
Thank you.
I've got the next question. Board members spend time attending meetings, like our board meetings, the committee meetings, conferences, and we have time prepping for those meetings. Each month, the board meets for 1 2-hour board meeting, 1 2-hour work session, and approximately 6 hours in various different committees. Board members typically attend the American Water Works Association regional meeting that's held in May, and a national in June conferences for the Special Districts Association of Oregon. And expenses for attendees at these conferences is covered by TVWD. Are you able to devote a sufficient amount of time to prepare and attend these meetings and conferences?
Um, um, it really depends what you mean by sufficient. I'm fairly quick in terms of if it is a presentation that I need to prepare, or a document that I need to prep. This is something I'm fairly conversant at, and I can do very quickly. However, information gathering and discussing takes a longer time. I'm not too sure that's common in a board situation. It looks like everything is a meeting-based discussion. Um, 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 but I don't know if Microsoft Teams is used enough to chat, at least in a group settings, and to form before a meeting even takes place. That's usually more productive or fast convergence, if you will. In terms of time commitment, yes, I think I can make the time commitments for these things. And technology is also not an issue. But the ways and means is something that I really need to understand. I haven't delved into the policies of TVWD, and therefore that's the first thing I must master. As a prior experience, I would say that I was the homeowners association president back in my first in 1997 through 2005, actually 2006. And over there, I actually negotiated with the Washington County things for my neighborhood, for a park and an elementary school, and a fire station. And I'm pleased to say that after 6 years of battle, I won all three of them. And then when I came to this side of my current home, then I again worked with Washington County and represent. I'm not a single homeowner, but I actually voluntarily created a Bethany Neighborhood Coalition, which there were 6 neighborhood association. They were disconnected, and I single-handedly actually united them all and created a LUBA appeal and worked with the Washington County. It might look like an appeal, but I actually worked with all the 4 commissioners, ran a lawsuit for 4 years, and finally got $17.5 million allocated for the project. So it was not an easy, nor is it my personal contribution. It is a community contribution, but you can imagine the length, the breadth, the involvement, and the rigorosity that required to get that budget approved was a non-trivial one. Yeah, so planners, um, um, you know, different kind of experts bringing together material evidence, bringing together counter proposals, budget analysis, finances, policies, 3 ordinance, you know, endless meetings, uh, you know, budgeting, preparation, counter argument. it's an endless argument. You know, winning something from the county is no joke. Prioritization, MSTIP, you name it. So yeah. So that is what, as many times I used to be very frustrated, but at the same time, every frustration ultimately gave me a small new door to pursue, and then that a next new door to pursue, and based on that, I realized it is your personal commitment that makes you go, not the current status. And if you have a commitment which is, uncompromising, then there is always a way, a constructive way.
Well, thank you. Thank you. For the sake of time, we're going to ask you our last question, so we don't run long here. Board members work with a variety of people, including fellow board members, TVWD employees, the public, and our customers. Conflict can and does occur. Please share an example of a time you successfully navigated conflict with another person. You probably knew this question was coming. It's on every interview.
Conflict happens, and it's a natural situation. It happens in every company. It's every company, every role. Where there is human, there's going to be conflict. Knowing that is probably the first line of defense. Okay, abstracting out, taking myself out of the power position is the first line of defense where you can diffuse a conflict. Okay, a conflict where I could be involved, or I could be the main culprit, or someone else could be involved and I'm just caught in between, right? So how do you avoid that? Sometimes people want to take a side, and those are all reasons why fire, fuel is added to the fire, right? Now, conflict can sometimes lead to root cause that are actually there. So impartially judging that issue is important. But conflict's worst part of is the people and their lack of motivation or disconnect, for that matter. That is the actual loss. So we have, as a rational and seasoned person, that's the first thing a person needs to try to avoid, not get into personal, but stick to the issue, objectivity, rather than personal preferences or comments, or biases, for that matter. If that can be carefully avoided, much of this can be avoided. And of course, the language, choice of words, you know uh, taking the higher road is very important, because this is not a one trick thing. There are multiple things that happens to conflict avoidance, but the first, from a rule of thumb, is to take yourself from the power position, objectively analyze the thing, disconnecting the people versus the core reason why there is discontent, and finally taking a little bit of time to discuss offline rather than face it up front. These are techniques one can take to avoid. But then again, situations always gives you curveballs.
It does indeed. Well, Mr. Rahman, we have about 1 minute left. I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have of us, if you have any at all.
First of all, thank you for entertaining me. I thought I was completely a misfit for this role, but then again, I took a leap of faith and applied, and thanks for considering me. Now, my question is, how will you be in a role of mentoring should I be selected? Because I think despite my professional experience and whatnot, I am not a commissioner, and not that am I pretending to be one. Okay, so you guys have to groom me, train me, and grow me to be one. Okay, so if that attitude is not there, then I might as well leave. It's important. So you have to have that mindset. So will you be patient with me? That's my question. Because
Yes, thank you. That is an honest and very well thought out question. First off, I'll begin by saying that the district provides training as to what are the policies, what are the procedures, what are the state laws. The state Oregon has the special districts of Oregon, the Special District Association of Oregon, which kind of oversees our policies and actions, and we provide initial district training as well as private training through the SDAO for you. And then, of course, your interactions with us and the other members of the district's leadership team would be your primary source of mentoring and leadership training.
okay,
So you're not sent off on your own. Commissioner Doan, you had something to say.
Well,
please.
I was going to say that becoming a member of the Water District Board is a lot easier than becoming a member of a school board, which was my introduction to this. It was like speaking a whole different language.
Yeah,
This is a congenial group.
right.
Um, you know, will help. And then it works fine. We meet well together, and if you have a basic science knowledge, and as one of my operating engineers told me once, you guys haven't been able to screw this up. Water still runs downhill. So anyway, no, I think you will enjoy it.
Well,
I have, otherwise I wouldn't have been here for 20 years. And but no, and uh, I'm going to turn 80 in another 4 years, and I'm not planning on running for re-election after that. So you have to be the new blood. Okay.
well, thank you. It's a lot of trust, and I appreciate that. I'm not there yet, but I will give it a shot, sincere shot. And like you said, the school board, those are necessary but very controversial. And I'd like to start my social services with some base first, without getting into controversy. Get my feet wet before I can say things out loud, right? Because I play in a hardcore technical in picoseconds and femtoseconds and microns, which is very different from what we are talking here. So it's macro science. So I'm sure I will enjoy.
Good.
Very good. Well, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, sirs.
Again, we're very grateful for your for not only your time but your willingness to consider serving on the board. We of course we're absolutely stunned by the number of applicants,
I understand.
and we're trying to winnow that down over the next couple of weeks. I believe, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school here, I believe we wanted to make an appointment by the September 15th date. That's our initial goal. That may not happen. It may be the October 15th date, but it won't make it into, I guess, Halloween. We will have it taken care of before the time change.
Sure.
That's for certain.
All right.
And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Debbie. And I'm sure she can either forward them on to us or answer them herself. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yes.
And thanks for taking the time to meet me. Bye
Yes.
bye.
And once again, thank you very much. We appreciate
All
it.
right. Same here. Bye
Have
bye.
a nice night.
You too. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. One down and two more to go. Debbie, are we still being recorded?
Yes, I was going to continue the recording throughout the discussion if that was the desire.
Huh? How does everybody feel about that being recorded while we make this discussion?
I think we should continue the recording.
Okay, thank you, Clark. And Any initial thoughts from anybody? Mine was that he actually has a great deal of experience. He just didn't have an opportunity to speak it until Commissioner Fisher's second question when he started talking about his work up in the district of the Bethany area.
Yeah,
He
I was a
has.
little
He's like, oh, holy mackerel, hold it! You have actually done quite a bit.
on his application. He didn't make it seem all that, critical or anything. But it's really like, I mean, he just made it seem like, oh, there were some conflicts in my neighborhood. He didn't explain that it was about a fire station or parks or any of that type of stuff in Bethany.
Mm-hmm.
So I was glad he finally found the switch and like elaborated on that more, because that was one of my questions reading over his application. Like, well, what is all this about exactly?
Yeah, I agree. Doing the home association as well as interacting with Washington County um, shows that he has actually quite a bit of experience working in these public domain roles. Anybody else have any comments they want to share? Well, all righty. Well, we've got about, what is it, 8 minutes? Hello. Can you
Hello.
hear me? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Todd.
Great. Thank you very much. First, let me begin by saying thank you and expressing the gratitude on behalf of the board and the rest of TVWD for your willingness to volunteer for this position and your offering up some of your time this evening to interview with us. We are very grateful. This is basically a voluntary position with very minimal reimbursement. So it is a position of service to your community, and we're very grateful for that. We have about a half hour today, so I want to get right to it. We have 8 questions for you, and then we want to give you time to ask questions at the end.
Sure.
I'm going to turn Commissioner Doan loose with the first question. He'll introduce himself and then ask you the question, if you don't mind.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
And I will remember to turn my microphone on. Okay, I'm Jim Doan. I was chief engineer of the Portland Water Bureau for about 20 years. And I was appointed to the board from the budget committee in 1998. And I've been on the board ever since. I will probably serve one more term, and then I'm getting to the point that I need to retire because of age. And so we're looking for people to take our place, or I'm looking for somebody to take my place. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. Yeah, it's been an interesting trip for us. When I first came, and Jim Duggan's been here longer than I would say it was a fairly sleepy little water district. And now, of course, we're spending $1.8 billion building a new source of water, and we're by far the technical leader in the region, and I think we're all very proud of that. Anyway, it's cool, and yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and kind of work them all together. There's 3 distinct questions, but I think the answers you give will hit all 3 of them. Okay.
Okay, fair.
So, what skills, connections, resources, and expertise do you have to offer to TVWD as a board member?
Okay, so it's a great question. So maybe just a little background first. I've lived in the area since 1971. I currently live in Rock Creek and have done so for the last 30 years. I'm always very amazed at the fact that all the services that we have some sort of disruption, but I've never had a water disruption other than a broken pipe in my own home. Yes. So that's been very good. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I worked at Tektronix for about 16 years. I went back to school and got my master's degree in MBA at University of Portland. And I'm currently in a doctoral program at Columbia University, finishing up my doctorate in the area of adult education, which happens to be my current vocation. I'm the CEO of a small consultancy. We do very, very specific kinds of finance and leadership training for large organizations around the world. So I've traveled extensively. I teach people finance. I teach people leadership. So those are sort of key capabilities that I bring. I am an engineer, but I don't have any civil engineering background, much like many of you on the board. So that would be certainly a gap that I have. I'm super curious. I'm a successful small business owner. Our business took a pretty significant hit during the pandemic in residence with companies around the world. We pivoted to virtual delivery, and I see the future, at least for me, as I'm getting to retire. I'm 61. That it's time to maybe do some more virtual work. In the next 5 years, I plan to retire.
Okay. I'm pointing, but he doesn't know I'm pointing at him. I'm pointing at Jim Duggan. And, but you can't tell that I'm pointing at you. I'll just shut my microphone off and be very quiet. Thank you for your answer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm Jim Duggan. I was first elected to the board 29 years ago, and I recently retired from the city of Beaverton as their development review engineer, a position I held for a little bit longer than I have been on the board here at TVWD. Yeah, as a civil engineer, it's been a great hobby for me these past 29 years. The board desires the selected board member, or the candidate that we allow to come on the board and choose. That person will need to run in the or that person. The board desires that person to run in the upcoming May 2023 special election for a 2-year term. That's this coming spring. You would have to file for that position, and it'd only be for a 2-year term. And if you wanted to continue, you'd have to run again in 2024, or excuse me, 2025. Do you intend to do so? To apply for next spring.
Yeah, I think I intend to apply next for the next session. But one thing that I would just give counsel to the board, just as an independent observer, you don't have any women on your board, and you don't have any people of color on your board. And I'm half Hispanic, so I might vouch for being part of a person of color, but I would think optically it'd probably be good for you to consider some diversity on the board.
Thank you. This position is replacing a former commissioner that was female. Unfortunately, none of the applicants that applied for this job were of the better gender. My wife is listening, so I thought I'd get some bonus points there. But I appreciate your input and your answer to the question. So thank you.
Thank you. I also think you should put me on the board because you have 2 Jims and then you'll have 2 Carls and 1 Todd. So
I feel obligated to just say this. At one point, we had 3 gyms.
And if we're being honest, I'm Commissioner Fisher. I could go by one of my middle names, which is James, so that would make me a Jim as well.
I see.
So yeah, I'm Commissioner Fisher, and I was appointed to the board in July after serving 2 terms on the district's budget committee. And I come from a background of most of political policy and civic engagement. So I've served on some various community boards, the Metzger Park Local Improvement District, the Tiger Transportation Citizen Advisory Committee, and I work in the legislature professionally. So that's a little bit about my background. And my question for you is, as a board member, what would you do if you directly observed or learned of district employees appearing unprofessionally or representing the district poorly? For example, misconduct, tending to personal errands during the workday, things of that nature.
Okay. So so obviously there is some code of conduct for everyone, including the board, on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So first, I think you have to really know what the rules are. The second thing is, depending upon the intensity of what the violation is, right? So if it's in the moment, someone's talking to the media and it's not appropriate, I probably would intervene immediately, just personally. But probably in most situations, number one, alert the rest of the board. Number two, talk to human resources, get documentation ready, and then let the process within the water district unfold as it normally does. I have to do those kinds of things in my own business because we are putting people under pressure as students. We have our own team members that are under pressure, and sometimes mistakes or behaviors come out, and we try to always use that as a mechanism for people to learn that, you know, this is within bounds and this is not, this is out of bounds in terms of behavior.
Turn it over to Commissioner Sanders.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. If you may, Carlo, is that acceptable?
Yeah, Carlos, fine, yes.
Great, thank you. My name's Todd Sanders. I'm currently the board chair and with a fire engine passing behind me. I work at Portland Community College. I was a budget committee member for 12 years and then was appointed to the board about 6 years ago. I am currently, as I said, the board chair, which is a revolving position. So this just happens to be my turn to be on the board as the chairperson. Let me get to our question. We'd like for you to describe your experience in meeting the needs of people with low incomes. How would your experience impact your votes in setting policy for the district, specific to water rates to preserve the district's infrastructure and to prepare for future water needs?
So this is where, Todd, I probably have very little to no experience in working with the needs of people of low income. So, you know, I think it's always important to make sure that we are helping those around us. I haven't personally had time to devote to that because of a busy work schedule and school and all that. But my desire to be a member of the board is really to learn more about that and certainly expose myself to the plight of those individuals in my community that aren't as fortunate as I am.
Thank you. Commissioner Doan?
Not only that, but I unmuted my mic. I'm getting better and better at this. Individual commissioners do not represent the district's position, or this is, I think I'll just throw this away for the time being. It's alerting me to a blood sugar issue.
Oh, okay.
But I don't have the phone with me and I need the phone to turn it off. So I think I'll just put it in the wastebasket here. And that's how we'll deal with it. I've taken care of it. Okay, individual commissioners do not represent the district positions on issues publicly, i.e. with the customers, public relations, the media, businesses, etc. How do you plan to avoid misrepresenting the district's position by distinguishing your personal views from the district's?
A really great question. In the kind of work that we do, where you're with senior leaders with organizations all over the world, this kind of issue crops up where people want to talk about things that are not appropriate in the workplace, and things like politics and religion. So over the years, I've learned in some instances hard lessons about how to compartmentalize what you believe and what you feel versus what you need to do to be successful in your job. I keep a super low social media profile. It only includes very close friends and family members. I'm super thoughtful about what I say before I open my mouth. You know, how is it going to help the situation? Am I being true to what my mission should be as a leader in the organization? So I'm very careful about that. I certainly would never ever speak to any public entities without first discussing it with the board, and probably I would not be the person that would be appropriate to be having those conversations. Other people should be should do that, because I just don't have the expertise about what's happening with the board. So at least as it's my potential career as a board member, I would certainly be in the background, not in the front and the foreground. I'm a good public speaker. It's part of my business, but I do prefer to listen and think. Often people think that I don't have something to say, but I'm super careful about what I say and when I say it.
Hey,
I think you're muted now.
I guess I'm next with
you're
the next question. The board of directors is a governing body responsible for setting policy for the district, and the chief executive officer, or CEO, leads operations and manages the district's employees on a day-to-day basis. The CEO reports to the board, and district employees report to the CEO. How do you plan to work effectively in this environment?
Well, I think first and foremost is you have to have some sort of a relationship with the CEO. And of course, probably each one of you has a different kind of relationship with the CEO. I personally am trying to transition out of being the CEO of an organization. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of activity, and I think I bring a wealth of experience to help guide the CEO, but not do the job. So, you know, I'm sure that you have an onboarding process that will help start to build relationships with the key players in the organization. Is Tom on the call?
Yes, he is,
He is.
as well as some other key staff members, including our HR director and the district attorney.
Okay.
Thank you, Kylie and Clark.
They are all behind the curtain today.
They're all behind the curtain.
They're just here as support for us if anyone asks a question of technical nature that is something that the board wouldn't be able to answer themselves.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So my next question is, board members spend time attending board meetings, committee meetings, conferences, as well as times prepping for these events. Each month, the board meets for 1 2-hour board meeting, 1 2-hour work session, and about 6 hours in various different committee meetings. Board members typically attend the American Water Works Association regional and national conferences and the Special District Association of Oregon conference. The expenses for attending these events is covered by the district. Are you able to devote sufficient time to prepare for and attend these events?
Yeah, I believe so. Now, I do have a busy travel schedule, and my calendar gets booked up a year in advance. So right now we are starting to book for next year. So I'm working with clients actively in the first quarter to book slots for programs that I may need to be involved in. The challenge for this fall is that everything is already booked, but looking at the calendar, it looks like most sessions are in the evening on the first Tuesday and on the third Wednesday. Is that correct? So, so that does not present too much of a difficulty to make that happen. For next year, it'll be much easier because of course, I can block those times ahead of time, knowing that that's the regular rhythm. Are all, and this is maybe a question for you, Carl, are all the meetings in the evenings, or are there daytime meetings as well?
Most of the meetings I've attended have been during the evening, but I have attended a few. I mean, it all depends on staff availability, if you're going to be meeting during the day.
Okay. And how far in advance are you booking most meetings? Are they, you know, a month in advance, 2 weeks in advance, a day in advance? What's the typical rhythm?
Well, when I was a member of the budget committee, we had our meetings all, you know, for the 3 or 4 months of the budget process, we had our meeting dates all set. So we knew from the very first meeting onward when our meetings would be.
Okay.
But you know, if you're having to work on an issue that's of the moment, it could be as little as a day's notice with staff. You need to have a meeting with somebody.
Okay. All right.
And if I may, Carl, Commissioner Fisher is fairly new, so asking him to answer those questions, put him on the hot seat a little bit. So most of and this question was really to revolve around the fact that, you know, we do have the Tuesday and the Wednesday meetings once a month, but we also have appointments on various regional committees. Be them finance committees or meetings with other districts and other partners. And those meetings are typically in the evenings. Some are held, like as our Joint Water Commission meeting is held on a Friday from about 1 to 3 p.m. Those meetings are scheduled 9 months in advance to a year in advance. And they're usually held 3 to 4 times a year. Some meetings, like Commissioner Duggan belongs to a very specific group that is working on our construction project. They meet more regularly than that, but most of the committee meetings are 3 to 4 times a year, and you know a year in advance when those meetings are being scheduled.
And many of them can, I just wanted to add, many of them can be breakfast meetings, or the one that President Sanders was referring to is a lunch meeting where typically we're going from noon to at the most 1:30. So it's not but we know the dates well in advance of those regular meetings because they're public meetings.
Okay. Several of you have mentioned the budget committee. Can you describe for me what that is? Is that a paid position within the water district, or is it also a volunteer like the commissioner position?
Yeah. It is a voluntary position, and let me see if Clark wants to be very legal in an explanation, or maybe Tom wants to be very specific in an explanation of what the budget committee does. This is why we have them behind the curtain.
Aha.
Clark, why don't you go ahead, Clark?
So I don't, depending on your perspective, the budget committee is an uncompensated position, just like the board has a minimal stipend per meeting. Curiously, the budget committee doesn't even get the $50 meeting fee that a commissioner would get for attending regular meetings. So it is truly a voluntary position. By statute, we have you five board members are on that committee, and you're matched by 5 citizens. So it's a total of 10 people to review the district's budget as prepared by our financial folks and brought to you by Tom and staff to explain where we're spending money, where we hope to spend money, and do you approve? And so there's a process of a few meetings, and then it comes to the board only for final review and approval. So it's a process that typically is in April, May of each year. And then the final board action takes place typically in June. So we always have 2 or 3 extra meetings in that March to May period of time. But we're on a biennial budget, so that happens every other year. So next year, for example, we'll be in budget for the 23-25 fiscal year. And but when the spring of 24 comes around, we won't have to have budget committee meetings. Okay. Tom, you want to add to that?
No, you nailed it. And we really look for, and I believe the board looks for any advice and guidance from the budget committee as a whole to help make the decision on are we spending the money in the right areas? Are they the right priorities? Those kinds of things. Does it align with our mission? Does it align with our strategic plan? Those are the kind of key things.
Okay. Thank you. That's a great answer. And I guess my only comment would be, if you don't select me as a commissioner, you can always put my hat in for being on the budget committee. I'd be happy to help out in that regard.
Well, thank you. That's a very kind offer. We have one more question for you this evening before we give you an opportunity to ask any back. And that is, board members work with a variety of people, including fellow board members, employees, and the public, our customers. Conflict does and can occur. Would you like to share an example of, how you navigate conflict with another person?
A personal conflict that I have with someone, or correcting conflict between 2 people that are independent of me?
Well, we didn't get specific, but you can choose. I have a feeling as a CEO, you probably have a fair number of items that you could bring up at this point.
Yeah,
and we'll let you decide how you'd like to answer it.
Absolutely. So we had 2 individuals on our team that were a little bit crossways on a trip where one individual wanted to take control of the vehicle for the program to drive the rest of the team back and forth, and was behaving erratically. So one of the other team members decided that they were going to go get their own car, which was probably the right choice. And what transpired was, in order to get to the car rental place, she needed this individual to drive her, and it was late at night, and he drove her there and then just took off, which, harsh words were said, which was not appropriate. And then, of course, he left her in this parking lot late at night all by herself, which was also not appropriate. So, I actually didn't hear about it first. My business partner heard about it first, and we always make a decision around who would be the best to do the interviews. So unfortunately, I'm the one who usually gets to do the interviews. So I interviewed each individual independently. I certainly documented everything that I wrote and made sure that they agreed with everything that we wrote. I took it back to my business partner and our attorney, and we discussed it. And we came up with some recommendations for how to repair the situation, and the individuals were called in together. We described the situation and got them to essentially apologize to each other for their behavior. And then for a period of about 6 to 9 months, we kept them apart with clients, because we just don't need that kind of disruption with clients. And then by that time, things had worked their way out, so they were fine. And then they started working together. Eventually, one of the people left the organization. He was a little bit toxic, good worker, but not a team player, and that he came to that realization. But we monitor that situation very closely, because most important thing for me is harmony in my team, because anytime there's not harmony in my team, the client sees it, I see it, everyone sees it, and it makes everyone uncomfortable, and it's not necessary. So.
Right. Well, thank you. Before we wrap up, the board wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions of us. If you have any, we understand if you don't as well.
Well, number one, I noticed we're at time, so that also.
We have a couple minutes budgeted in, so if we
okay.
go over, please feel free.
I don't really have questions. I've already asked the questions that I really had, but I'm sort of impressed about how long everyone has been on the board, which means that there must be a good harmony on the team, and you must enjoy working with each other, because if it's volunteer, you're spending 20 to 30 hours a month with each other doing things. Perhaps maybe each one of you could share with me what the downside is of working on the board, because it all sounds like upside, but there's got to be some frustrations. There's got to be some things that you wish were different. So I'd like to hear from you what you think the challenges are.
I could take that one really quick. Working on the board has been a fantastic hobby for me. I've loved it. But the thing that I always have a problem with, and we don't spend 20 to 30 hours a month. It's quite a bit less than that, fortunately, together as a board. But it is getting pigeonholed by constituents who have a problem. Sometimes you can help them. Other times, the board policy is set. We have this huge project that is costing a lot of money, and you're not able to satisfy your constituent. And that's the biggest downside. You can't make everybody happy. In fact, sometimes just doing your job properly can create a lot of anger in the community. But then again, I think our track record has been pretty good. Like you mentioned at the beginning, that you haven't had an incident of water outage, but it happens. It happens with construction. It happens with just regular operation and water leaks. So That's the downside, is not being able to help everybody that pigeonholes you or asks even reasonable questions.
This is Jim Doan. I think one of the reasons the district is successful is that each commissioner is able to put their own point of view aside and to go for what's best for the district.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many times when I vote for stuff that isn't the way I do it, but it's the way the district does it. And I'm perfectly happy with that. And I think all the other commissioners are that way too. That, you know, what's good for the district is what's good for the constituents. So that's what holds us together, I think.
I think Commissioner Duggan sort of, got to the core of it, is that, serving in local government, no matter what level you're at, you're looking for problems and you're trying to find opportunities, and you're trying to, find problems that you can turn into opportunities to make people's lives better. And what we sometimes forget when we're in our own little bubbles is that not everyone might agree with the opportunity, or that that's a problem. And so that's when you get the constituents pushing back on you. And everyone in local government at some point has had that realization where they go, we're not going to be able to make everybody happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I share the sentiment of all three of the other commissioners. We do our best, and by being collegial, having respect for one another, and understanding that we all are doing this out of the graciousness of our hearts, makes things a lot smoother. Where you don't, none of us have ulterior agendas, right? And I think that's a big part of why we can be successful. And we have, and I will make this point specific before I let you go, we have a wonderful team at TVWD. Our leadership group, our staff, our employees at TVWD are absolutely world class through the entire organization. They are wonderful people to represent from a board's perspective.
Excellent.
Right. Great. Well, again, thank you for your time. We're so grateful that you have considered the board. At this point, we have a number of applicants, which was very surprising for us. We're trying to winnow that down as quickly as possible. We're trying to maybe make it to the September 15th board meeting and have a person selected. It may take us all the way to October 15th, but I know we won't go past the time change at the end of October. We'll have a decision made by then. If you have any questions, feel free to please get a hold of Debbie. I know she's been the person in contact with you. If you have any questions of the board, she can pass them on to us, or other questions, she will know what to do from there.
Great. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your consideration. I sort of feel honored that I was asked to talk to you today, so appreciate it.
We appreciate it of you, and I hope you have a nice evening.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
All right. 2 down, 1 to go. Did anybody have any comments they wanted to share before we maybe take another quick bio break or cookie break or whatever need be?
We got 2 impressive candidates so far.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
I appreciate that he volunteered for the budget committee too.
Right? That was fantastic. That was a fantastic thing. Yeah, I was going to say, well, regardless of whether we choose you or not, you're now on the budget committee. Because if he's the board member, he's still got to serve on the budget committee. All righty. Well, it looks like our next one is at 7:30, and that will be our final one for today. Hello.
Let me adjust my volume here. Hello.
Hello. Okay, that confirms my first question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. Thank you. Apologies for having to do this virtual, but it's been that way for 2.5 years, so shouldn't be all that uncommon. And thank you for taking the time to apply for the position and for taking the time this evening to meet with us. As you know, this is not a well reimbursed position. It's pretty much a voluntary position, and you having the willingness to be considered is something where the board has much gratitude. So I'll begin by saying thank you.
Well, I want to thank you guys for the work that you've done over the number of years, because, like you say, it's mostly a volunteer thing, and it takes a great deal of commitment to make all of that work. So, your community appreciates that.
Well, thank you very, very much. Those are kind words. We're gonna, in lieu of the fact that we have 30 minutes today, we're gonna get going with the questions. Each of the board members will introduce themselves as they ask a question. And as Commissioner Doan completes his first question, you may want to take a second to also use it to introduce yourself. Does that sound okay?
That's fine.
All right, Commissioner Doan.
The trick here is we're going in alphabetical order. So, and I'm hard of hearing, so I'm reading a caption, so I may lag a little. It's not lack of interest, it's the electronics. Okay, great. I've been on the board since 1998. Prior to that, I was the chief engineer of the Portland Water Bureau. And it's been 30, no, it's been 25 years that I've been on the board. And it's been a lot of fun, really. We've seen a lot of growth in the district, and we're doing things that I think 25 years ago we never would have thought we would be doing.
Yep.
So the question I'm going to ask you is, what skills, connections, resources, and expertise do you bring to the Tualatin Valley Water District?
Okay. And Todd, this is where you wanted me to introduce myself a little bit here. Okay. Well, my name is, again, Ron Higby. I have been a resident of Washington County since 1976. So been around, a number of years. And my background has been primarily in the public service, public agency, public service, or support of public agencies. I was a director of engineering for TriMet for 25 years. And as director of engineering, I was responsible for implementing TriMet's capital improvement program, which included the light rail projects, the first one out to Gresham, and then to the west side, and then further to the north and to the airport. And that is pretty much a soup to nuts thing, from the planning and the environmental and design work. Also a lot of involvement in the public outreach pieces. So when it comes to kind of what would I bring to the board, I think the key piece of that is really my understanding and experience with major capital works projects, including multiple projects going on simultaneously. I have a great deal of experience with budgeting and the finance elements of projects. Also the scheduling, particularly the coordination between schedules of different projects that, like I say, that may be going on simultaneously. I also have experience with establishing relationships with other public jurisdictions and private stakeholders as well. The projects that I worked on tended to encompass many jurisdictions and many multiple agencies. And you weren't able to just do it by fiat. I mean, you had to have the skills and abilities to coordinate all of what was going to be happening within the jurisdictions and make sure that they were all on board and that things were well coordinated so that there weren't any, delays or cost overruns to the project. And these projects took 6 to 7 years to implement. And I know that Tualatin Valley Water District has got a fairly major project that's ongoing now that's going to take in that order of magnitude of time to implement. So I think that's the really the key or the most significant expertise area of experience that I could contribute to the board.
All right, thank you. I have the next question. I'm Jim Duggan. I've been on the board for 29 years, first elected in 1993. For me, it's been a great hobby, and it's been exciting. In fact, I think our district had a lot of coordination on the West Side Light Rail with all the construction that occurred all the way from way up there near the Sunset Highway, all the way out past 185th and Cornelius Pass Road. Question I have for you is regarding if you're the successful candidate that's selected from this interview process. The board desires that the selected candidate run in the upcoming May 2023 special election for a 2-year term. And then they'd have to run again if they choose to serve longer in May of 2025. Do you intend to run as a candidate, at least in this upcoming spring 2023 election for the board?
The short answer is definitely yes, I would do that. I understood that going in when I read your requirements for the job application and the information that I've been provided. And I would have every intention, if I was the selected nominee as a commissioner, to do that run, both in the upcoming May and then in 2025 as well.
Thank you.
Let me just add one little touch of things, because as I've listened to each of you and read the information that's been provided, I know that most of you have been serving on the board for a long period of time. So that, demonstrates the commitment, especially Jim, from your perspective. So I would not be talking with you today if I did not have the intention to really join in with that level of commitment.
Well, my name is Carl. I'm Commissioner Fisher, and I served on the Budget Committee for 2 terms before being appointed to the board in July. And my background is mostly in civic engagement, public policy, and politics. I work for a state representative in the legislature, and I've served on local community boards like the Metzger Park Local Improvement District and the Tiger Transportation Citizen Advisory Committee that advises city council and staff on transportation matters affecting the city of Tiger. So my question for you is, as a board member, what would you do if you directly observed or learned of a district employee appearing unprofessional or representing the district poorly? As an example, maybe some misconduct or tending to personal errands in the work during the workday.
Well, first of all, what I would not do is really confront the individual. What I would do is, document the situation. And then I would, provide information to the president of the board in terms of my documentation and the discussion as to whether or not to share that with the CEO or pursue it with the HR director. Sometimes when you observe something, you get the wrong impression. So I would want to make sure that I wasn't jumping to conclusions and that I would be passing it on to the right people who would be able to, investigate that and make a determination if there really was a violation. So that's, but the important thing is to, as you say, that not let it go by. You've got to, ever be vigilant because, where all of our reputations are at stake. So it's important to do that and make sure that that message gets across, not just in terms of our board interactions, but also among all the staff.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, this is Todd Sanders. I have been a commissioner now for, I think, 4, 5, or 6 years, starting to blur together a little bit. The pandemic has certainly changed things. I miss my free cookie that comes with our meal during our board meetings, and I actually miss each of these other board members. Prior to that, I was on the budget committee for I think 12 years, and I work at Portland Community College. So my question to you is, can you please describe your experience in meeting the needs of people of low incomes? How would your experience impact your votes in setting policy for the district specific to increasing water rates to preserve the district's infrastructure and preparing for future water needs?
I think that's a very good question. And the my history in terms of involvement in communities of low income. When I was at TriMet, I was one of those selected to be part of a group to put together a program to help mitigate the different fare increases that were happening, particularly the impact that was on low income or disadvantaged individuals. So that group got kind of expanded, or the role of it got expanded to include, again, people with disabilities, people with students, for example, who were needing to ride the buses to and from school. And so it got to be a pretty broad coalition of folks that we were dealing with. And I was particularly pleased to see that the board endorsed, the TriMet board endorsed the recommendations that came out of this task force that I was part of. And it has continued on in terms of working with communities, low income areas, disadvantaged people, or even disabled people. And enable, because transportation is really key for people to get to jobs and medical appointments, also to, for their social engagements as well. So that was a really particular element that I was proud of. In terms of how it relates to what happens on the board, I know that just from looking through the various materials, that Tuolumne Valley Water District has a program of providing devices, if you will, that help conserve water, from shower heads and faucet aerators and those types of things. And, again, I'm saying this without knowing the extent of what that is, but I completely support those types of things. And I think that, the outreach and the education of the community in order to be able to help them stay within the lower tiers of the rate schedules is a good thing. I also think that it's important to, in our the board's outreach or Tuolumne Valley Water District's outreach to the various low-income or disadvantaged areas to partner with them. For example, Habitat for Humanity may be one of those that there's an opportunity to partner with, or even the latest Metro. I think it was a bond measure that passed, or a tax levy that was passed last year, that helps keep people in their homes and helps with subsidizing rent. And of course, it's not just rent; it's utilities and other things that go along with that. So, and the water bill is not necessarily a small piece for some of these people who are low income. So, working with them to either develop grants or some supportive program. As a commissioner, I would very much kind of support those efforts on the part of the district to do that.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Duggan?
I was cheated.
You think
Yeah,
I would know how to spell by the...
Go ahead, Jim.
No, Commissioner Doan.
Do it.
Commissioner Doan. It's because Commissioner Duggan's in the upper left on my screen. And so I'm going clockwise and not... Commissioner Doan, my apologies.
Nope, no problem. I've been slighted before. Okay,
I was afraid I dozed off.
individual commissioners do not represent the district's position on issues publicly, i.e. with customers, public entities, businesses, the media. How do you plan to avoid misrepresenting the district position by distinguishing your personal views from the district's?
Well, first and foremost, it's really important for someone like myself, who would be a new commissioner, to really have a clear understanding of the board policies and procedures. I know that we got sent this document, and it's really pretty concise, and it spells out the roles and responsibilities of each of the commissioners and other members within or other staff within the district. So I think as a understanding my role within those board policies, and also knowing who to go to within the agency to call on the CEO or other appropriate staff as issues arise. I have, as I mentioned earlier on, I've spent virtually my entire career in the public forum, if you will. And I've had to interact and deal with other public agencies, elected officials, boards such as yourselves, and the general public. And so it's always in the forefront of my mind to make sure that I am not exceeding my authority or level of responsibility, and making sure that I'm aware of what resources are available to respond as issues do come up, so that I can help be a problem solver to anyone or any group that needs information from the district.
Thank you.
Okay, I have the next question. The Board of Directors is a governing body responsible for setting policy for the district, and the Chief Executive Officer, or CEO, leads operations and manages the district's employees on a day-to-day basis. The CEO reports to the board, and the district employees report to the CEO. How do you plan to work effectively in this environment?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that my career has been involved in working with boards and CEOs or general managers. And I really think the key to working successfully in that type of environment is first and foremost to be a good listener. You have to, understand and where people are coming from, to use that vernacular. Understand the roles and responsibilities of all of the parties that are involved in that particular issue. And I think most of all, first and foremost, is to be professional in dealing with others, be understanding, be sympathetic. Uh, a lot of times helping, putting yourself in their shoes, helps with that. But, again, being a good listener and, being able to help be a problem solver instead of, creating problems is the approach that I've tried to use throughout my professional career.
Thank you.
I have the next question. Board members spend time attending various meetings, like our board meetings, our committee meetings, conferences. They spend time preparing for those meetings. There's usually a lot of reading that involves a lot of the meetings. Each month, the board meets for a 2-hour board meeting and 1 2-hour work session, and there can be up to 6 hours in various different committee meetings. Board members typically attend the American Water Works Association regional meeting and the national conference, and then the Special District Association of Oregon conference. The expenses for attending these conferences and meetings is covered by TVWD. Are you able to devote sufficient time to prepare for and attend these meetings and conferences?
Again, the short answer is yes. I am recently retired and I have no, hard and fast significant constraints on my time. I mean, my wife and I do like to travel, and we have a timeshare that we're involved with every other year. But those are the dates that we set for those are totally at our discretion. So any of those things that you mentioned would be fine with me. In fact, I only live about 1.5 miles away from your offices there. Well, you're not in the office yet, but at some point, hopefully, everybody will be back in the office. So, but yes, I would look forward to representing those types of meetings and conferences.
Thank you.
All right, Ron. This is our last question, and yeah, one day we do hope to all be back together, face to face, and getting our free cookie. Commissioner Doan's joke just before you joined us was, "Could someone fax him his cookie, please?" And that's why we were laughing when you first joined us. All right, so the last question is, board members work with a variety of people, including fellow board members, TVWD employees, the public, and customers. Conflict can and does occur in these interactions. Please share an example of a time you successfully navigated conflict with another person.
I have multiple choices for this, but I thought that maybe you might appreciate this one. Right there off of Merlot Road, where your offices are located, there is a TriMet bus facility that's right near where the light rail station is. Well, when I worked at TriMet, we needed a bus maintenance facility or a place to route buses out of that was on the west side. We did not have one of those. So I was the project manager for identifying a site and location for that the overnight parking, if you will, and dispatch of the buses. Well, we wound up selecting a property that was on the market from Mrs. Merlot Farms. And I know this goes back a ways, Todd, here, but our budget was so tight that we needed to use her or remodel her home as the actual dispatch center to begin with, and then just basically pave the rest of the site to, and put in a fueling station for the dispatch of those buses. Well, right after we negotiated the settlement with Mrs. Merlot and the papers were all signed, about 2 days later, I got a call from one of her neighbors just a little further down the street saying that Mrs. Merlot's chickens were all over her yard. And I needed to get a hold of her and have her come get them. So I contacted Mrs. Merlot, and of course, now that the property transaction was done, and she says, "They're not my chickens, they're your chickens." So, and technically she was right. So I had to get, this was before you could, use internet, before you could Google places, but I had to chase down somebody who would take her chickens and get them all, out of the neighbor's yard. Well, after many phone calls, I finally found somebody. He says, I'll take them, but I ain't gonna catch them. So I called Mrs. Merlot back, and she was still not really happy to hear from me about this, but she agreed to go out there on the site and help round up, if you will, the chickens, because she knew them by name and they came to her. And so as they came to her, we snatched them up and put them in this guy's cage and resolved this, the free chicken experience there on Merlot Road. So Mrs. Merlot was, I guess you would call her not exactly enamored about that to begin with, but she wound up, then saying goodbye to all of her chickens. So it wound up being a good outcome for everybody involved. So I've shared that story many a time, and so I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoy telling it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So that's it for our questions. We wanted to leave a few minutes in case you had any questions of the board. And it's not necessary, but we wanted to make sure if you did have any that we had a chance to answer them.
Well, I don't really have any questions of the board. I've, like I say, I've read through a lot of the materials that you have online and looked at the budget documents. And so most of my questions have been, answered that way. Again, as I stated earlier on, I want to commend you all for the work that you do and the investment that you make in our community, because it's having a reliable source of water. I had a college professor, I won't go, that's even older than Mrs. Merlot's story, but when I was taking my hydraulics class, he told us, the class, that water at some point is going to be more valuable than oil, and a more valuable resource than oil. And boy, it is sure coming to that extent. So, they ain't making any more water, so we have to be good stewards of it and make sure that, we don't waste it, and that we guard its quality and, for future generations. So the work you're doing is to be commended for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Those are very kind words. We represent an outstanding group of people at TVWD, from the CEO to all the staff members in every department. They are absolutely world-class employees as well as people. So if you're going to belong to a board, this is probably one of the best boards you can choose to be part of. There's no doubt about that. Next steps for us, as you probably are aware, there were a number of applicants, which was surprising but very welcome, but at the same time difficult because there are a number of very high quality individuals like yourself, Ron. Where our initial aim is try to have someone nominated for our September 15th board meeting. That may or may not happen. Please don't hold us to it, but we'll certainly have someone in place by October 15th so that when the time change happens at the end of October, our board is back up to its 5-member size. So if you have any questions in the meantime, I believe you have Debbie's contact information. Feel free to send her any questions you have and she can forward them to us or whoever is best to answer them.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor. It's humbling. And it's great to meet you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, nice to meet you as well. And thank you again for volunteering to serve on this board. As you know, you're well aware through your career, it's not a high-paying position. You do it
No,
for
but
the love of your community.
the cookies make up for it. No.
The cookies, and they're always good cookies, but when they get faxed, they lose some of the flavor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Best of luck in your selections. I know you can't go wrong. You'll pick somebody that will be a great partner for you.
All right. Well, thank you thank you very much. Have a nice evening, Ron.
Good night.
Good night.